The Rotary Club of Cupertino presents City Council Candidate Forum 2018, featuring the 8 candidates running for Cupertino City Council. And now for this afternoon's moderator, Phil Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Phil Johnson, and I would like to welcome you to our 2018 Cupertino Council Candidates Forum. Although a previous member of the council, I have lived in Saratoga for the last 12 years, and I do not have a vote in this election. That's why they chose me. Our goal today is to help you make informed choices in this election. We have 8 candidates running for 3 open seats. We will jump right into the questions, and most questions will have a 1-minute response time. Not all candidates will answer the same questions. Daryl Stowe, over here to my left, to your right, will be our timekeeper. Also, there are blue index cards on each table and pens, and if you have questions, just jot them down, and Judy Wilson and Roberta will be wandering around and can collect them, and will bring them up to me. And if we have time, I'll get as many as we can. So with that, I think we're going to dive right in. And for the first question is going to be for Orrin, Darcy, and Savita. And the question is, one of the most important decisions you will make will be the selection of a city manager. What traits will you look for in a city manager? And Orrin, we will start with you.
So that's an interesting question. We've had 2 really different city managers in the past, David Brandt and Dave Knapp. And it really, the city manager should be there to fit what's happening at the time. When we picked David Brandt, the Apple Park was underway. It was just a major project, and we felt that his background in land use was the best fit of the candidates that we had at the time. I think with what's going on now, that I would look for somebody more like a David Knapp, that's a kind of a more in the community, consensus builder, community builder, because I think that's really needed in the city right now. So obviously they'd have to have all the other skills, but that'd be what I would be looking for.
Thank you, Orrin. Darcy?
I'd look for someone who's dynamic, intelligent, and available. Those are 3 traits that I think speak to the needs of Cupertino. Dynamic because we have a lot of things going on. Our demographic is very eclectic. Our age demographic, it goes up and down the spectrum. We have families that are very young to people that have aged in place. We have obviously people that are drawn from all over the world here. I think intelligence speaks for itself. It's something that if we're able to approach these problems from a clear-headed perspective, obviously we're going to get better outcomes. And then with regard to availability, I would really like to make sure that we not necessarily implement the policy that we used to have in Cupertino, that our city manager live in the city, but at least encourage that availability to be able to come to our weekend events, to be able to respond in a timely fashion to the various types of issues that may arise on a very quick basis.
Thank you, Darcy. And Savita?
Thank you. Since everybody knows that we've just approved a big project in Valpo, I think land use experience is primary. We really need the new city manager to have that experience. Some legal know-how of California laws, knowledge of California municipal laws is really important. And also a little bit of awareness of what's happening in the Senate and Assembly, because the legislature brings in laws and then we are constantly figuring out a way to either oppose them or support them. They should definitely have innovative ways of communicating with our public. Outreach is important, and we've seen that everything that we try, we only get to some of the public, not everyone, so they have to bring that with them. Managerial experience, fiscally conservative, both are really important, and I really think they should be even-tempered, willing to sit through 8 to 10-hour meetings. And maybe it's time for a woman who appreciates diversity.
Okay, thank you, Savita. So my next question is for Liang, Tim, Tara, and Hungwei, and John. And given that we're in Silicon Valley, What is or could be the role of technology in delivering city services? So we'll start with you, Liang.
I think we should start with having online rental reservation for city meetings and payment system. So far, people have to come into the Quinlan Center to make reservation, and we should have online submission of business licenses and all the other business services, and online reporting and status report of all the service needs like road repair, and last but not least, open town hall meetings on important issues. This year we have improved. We have done some survey on dog parks and head tax. However, the most important issue, like Valco shopping mall, there has been no survey or wide survey of all the citizens. It should not take a referendum to get all the citizens involved in this most important conversation, which might affect 20, 30 years the future of Cupertino. And we can, of course, we can involve a lot more social media, and we can do, as with the senior citizens, we can deliver a lot of services through digital and to the senior citizens and our children.
Okay. Thank you, Liang. Tim?
Thank you very much. I'm Tim Gorsulowsky. I'm wearing pink today in observation of Breast Cancer Awareness Month because Annette passed away with breast cancer. So wanted to share that with you. One of the biggest items I think that we have noticed in cities, and I've done surveys with a lot of cities that are larger than this, is communication. And it's huge. And going out to other cities and observing the errors that they're making, and looking here in Cupertino where we're not involving people one-on-one and day-to-day. So having an open communication, and where we're sitting down with meetings away from council meetings, where we're meeting with people, the city should be communicating and listening to people's issues. For example, we have safety concerns, we have security concerns. Do we hear those? Probably not. So a lot of things can be done online, but I still love the idea of dealing with one-on-one and people actually answering the phone and talking to people again. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Tara?
Thank you. Well, Cupertino is a hub of high-tech innovation here in the heart of Silicon Valley, and I think the city and city council can do a lot better job of utilizing this technology to better serve residents. Technology can provide timely information for community members, but it can also allow for folks to actively engage and have their voices heard and join in making progress. The ways we could do this: online polling through text, Santa Clara County safety text alerts, and I would personally want to send out email newsletters from my council office, and this is something I have experience doing. And as new technology evolves, we have to ensure that technology is compatible with our right to privacy. Privacy is a basic civil liberty I'd want to protect.
Good. Thank you very much. Hung Wei.
I'm Hung Wei. Thanks, Phil. We live in innovation and technology advanced city, so I am all about advocating for private and public collaboration so our city can really engage young people, people who work for Apple, and really have this technology notifications. Right now we have postcards and we have website. It's all pretty passive. So in order to have town halls that people really attend, we need to reach to people. So let's the city have a plan for technology expansion, employ young people and work with our biggest employer, Apple, to get this technology out there and establish a real communication channel that's planned, that's organized, so we can reach every corner of the residents. And when we want to have town hall meetings, when we want to get information out, we are organized so that residents are notified by postcards and also by the technology that we can employ. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And then John Willey?
Yes. So I really see that technology could play a huge role in bringing Cupertino into the 21st century. We have so many residents, and they're not aware of all the things and all the decisions that are being made in the city. By getting a pulse of all those residents that are out there, putting it on the city website. Let there be no mistake about it, what the residents are in favor of and what they're not in favor of. By utilizing this combination of surveys and other mechanisms to get the resident opinions on traffic, schools, development, building heights, densities, this is all of our community, and we should all be in the decision process. Making Cupertino the most connected community in the Bay Area, bring it into the 21st century. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Good comments, everyone. And you've now heard from everyone, and I realize that I never introduced them all in the beginning. And I think it was partly because I could avoid pronouncing Savita's last name.
I'll do it myself.
A Freudian slip. So, okay, we're going to move on to another question, one that's a fun question for me. And this is directed at Orrin, Darcy, and Savita, again, because of their past experience. And my question is there any decision you regret or a building that you would want to redesign? And again, here's your chance to confess, Orrin. So we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I look back at the 9 years I was on the council, I actually there's only one decision that we didn't make that I think we should have. Other than that, I think that we made a lot of good decisions. We revitalized all of the shopping centers, save one, and we did Blackberry Farm and of course Apple Park. So Main Street started with a town square, and then they put some kiosks in there that kind of grew into, Phil's and Bueno Justo, and it doesn't feel like a town square anymore. So if I could roll back the clock, I would have that be a real town square, because originally that was my vision for it. But that's the main one. Other than that, I think everything else turned out pretty good.
Good. Thank you, Orrin. Okay. Darcy.
Thanks, Phil. No, I don't regret what I consider sometimes bad decisions. I regret more bad process. I think we really need to be able to bring some civility into our discussion and acceptance that, we're not always going to get everything we want every single time. But I'll give you an example of a building that would be good to redesign. We had a city hall plan, and that I think was something that didn't necessarily have full community buy-in, and we do have a second bite at that apple at this point if Tier 2 goes through with the Valco plan, but possibly even in the future. We can take a look at some of the elements of the architectural design and also try to figure out what would be a bit more appropriate for our community. I think that it's critically important to take decisions that you don't necessarily agree with and do your best in good faith to come out with the best outcomes for the community. So I think that type of general perspective and idea is what I'm trying to inject into the community. And to the extent that I have regrets, I regret that we didn't do more in certain decisions to get to that point where we have more of a copacetic environment.
Okay. Thank you, Darcy. Savita.
Savita Vaidhyanathan. Okay, got that out of the way.
Thank you.
It's been an interesting 4 years, and I have given lots of thought to every agenda item that's come across, done a lot of research, homework before I took any decision. There is one thing that happened in my year as mayor, and I considered doing a citizens advisory committee similar to what was done at Lynbrook. And there was a lot of pushback from one segment of the community and some name calling on the dais, and it was voted down. So I tried a different process. I said, let's do informative seminars. At the end of the informative seminars, possibly we could have brought back the community engagement through that Citizens Advisory Committee, or by that time it was almost the end of my year, so I couldn't bring it back. So that is something I wish we had had a little bit more community input on. And one of the things that I would have done different if I had an opportunity is the area behind Dianza Boulevard and Town Center Lane, where you have Bittersweet Curry House, that's a housing and retail complex, maybe made that into a more downtown accessible by bike and walk. Okay. Easy to say now, though.
Okay, good, thank you. A question for the rest of you now. Is there a key city initiative or pet project that you personally would like to champion? over the next 4 years. And again, alphabetically, I'll start picking with you, Liang.
So I've been talking to residents, and the biggest concern of everyone is traffic. And so with traffic, I think the first thing is don't bring in more cars, but then the current situation is already a lot worse than before, so I would like to see shuttle buses for seniors and children, and start with serving initial essential routes. And we can use technology to improve the reliability and flexibility of the shuttle buses we provide. And I also hope that we can work with other cities to connect the shuttle buses between cities. And I hope county can provide certain initiatives to provide commuter buses for public agency employees. And another thing I'd like to work on is apprenticeship and internship programs for teens and young adults, so that our children can get more hands-on real world experience. I hope that the city can lead with this cooperation with businesses either in Cupertino or in the entire Silicon Valley.
Okay.
And I'd like to connect older adults and young families to create a multi-generational community.
Perfect. Thank you, Liang. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much. So one thing I would love to see is, and I would love to play a part in, is bringing back a lot of the CTE programs to our schools. So career technical education is so vital in that it doesn't only teach certain trades, it also guides our students. And we've found that in this state, that it guides a student toward healthcare or toward a future, what they may be wishing to do for the rest of their life. And it makes a huge impact on our students. And I would love to play a huge role in funding those programs and pushing those programs. Another one, real briefly, is I would love to be a part of what I've said many, many times, is bringing business back into our region, be it small business and some good paying job business for our future, because when we do have a downturn, we're going to be hoping we did have a lot more, and ultimately we'll experience one as we have over the past many, many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Tara?
Thank you. Well, 3 key initiatives I'd want to champion. 1, citywide shuttles. 2, proactive city planning. And 3, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. For citywide shuttles, I'd push for a TMA model, which offers free fares for residents, and our neighboring cities, for instance, Mountain View, have found this model successful, and we can even look to partner with them to connect us to local transit stops. In terms of city planning, I'd want to champion a stricter jobs to housing balance in our zoning. We can't continually approve more jobs than housing. That's what put us in this housing crisis to begin with. I think we have to look to see if there are any holes in our general plan. Under the environment, we can look to fund more EV charging stations. And also I'd want to work with our planning department to see if we could phase out natural gas in new construction.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hong Wei?
As an 11-year school board, I understand that the top priority for any public agency is to maintain our physical health, and also to decide what are our top priorities on expenditures. When I look at our city, first thing I would tackle is the library parking issues. We need more space for library parking and more space for programming for our students, and also parkland acquisition. Any land that we can acquire for our park and recreation, I think that would be an asset for our community. And bike and pedestrian walkways and to connect the cities, that would be top priorities for our own cities. However, traffic issues is regional. So another priority is to devise a plan to really have a big sum of money that we can work with our neighboring cities to eventually have a real transit system that's going to connect job and housing together all the way from San Jose to Santa Clara to Cupertino to Sunnyvale to Mountain View and back to Diridon Station. That should be our long-term expenditure goal.
Okay, good. And then John?
Yeah. So what I would see as the most important one pertains to how our city is being changed. In the last several years, there's been a huge push to change our city And it's not being driven by the residents, it's being driven by the developers. Our general plan needs to be made much tighter than it is now, but it needs to represent what the residents want. The general plan can set the requirements to keep from having too much traffic increase, too much enrollment increase. And above all, now that the state is getting involved and passing laws like the SB 35, if we don't want to be manipulated by this stuff, we need to lock that general plan and clearly make it represent what the residents want. The impacts that are going to be put on our community are much more than what the residents want, and we have to make sure we take the steps to lock that down so that we aren't inundated by these types of things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Now, this next question is going to be for everybody, and we're going to go backwards, and we're going to start with John. And this question, I'm interested in the fact that all of you have traveled. Have you seen any examples of new urban design ideas that you would love to bring back or to see in Cupertino? Examples in other cities, other countries. John?
Well, being an engineer that works in high tech, I have traveled extensively. Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, Singapore. At any rate, I've seen a lot of things that I don't like. I've seen a lot of development that just has played out based on whatever got built, and you wind up with more or less a chaotic type of community, and that we don't want. When I look around the United States, yes, there are places that do have a lot more land than we have here, places where a lot of the houses don't even have to have fences between them, and that's wonderful. Years ago, one of the vendors that was out seeing me, and he said, wow, the weather's so good out here. And I said, well, why don't you look around while you're out here? And he says, no. He says, back home, there's no fences. There's lots of land. So we need to understand that we are limited by what we have to work with, but we don't want it to be just chaos. We want it well-planned, long-term planning. How much traffic can our roads truly carry, and we cannot allow that to be saturated. And we can't use it all up today because there needs to be growth next year, the year after, and the year after. Long-term planning, very well thought out planning, and that's how Cupertino got to be the city that we all came to want to live in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Hung Wei?
I believe Singapore is one of our model we can follow. It has long-term vision when they build their city. It used the most innovative architecture and man-made green space areas that thrive among the housing and unique ways of managing their waste. And also they create partly self-sufficient towns. That's exactly what we can do in Valco. Create a partly self-efficient towns that's going to really enhance our quality of life and not burden our resources. And also they embrace the most modern technology. And the last thing I really like what they do is they prioritize housing to accommodate affordable housing. So I think that's a model that we can follow.
Even green space on the airport runway.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Savita.
Yes. Creative, innovative. Yeah.
Thank you. So I visited Japan and Lisbon in the last 5 years, and I learned something from both the cities. Definitely having mass transit and having solutions for last mile, first mile is really important. That way you can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions significantly by reducing people in single occupancy vehicles. And the fact that you can get to places way faster. So that was a wonderful experience in Tokyo, connecting to other cities. What I noticed in Lisbon, they also have an ocean on one side, very similar to us. They have a bridge very similar to Golden Gate Bridge. It's a city which is very similar to ours. And they have public transit, and it really works very well. And I also want to talk a little bit about our sister city in India, Bhubaneswar, which is in a developing country. They are managing to build mass transit in 1 year for a World Hockey Tournament this year. And I visited them last year, and they said they'll have something similar to our Clipper card. So I think managing housing and transit together is the way for a future model city. Thank you.
Okay. Tara?
Yeah, well, as a lifelong resident, but someone who's worked outside of Cupertino, I'm really passionate about seeing what other cities are doing, looking for the best practices that we can incorporate so Cupertino can lead the way. One of the best experiences of my life was traveling as a student ambassador as part of our Sister Cities exchange to Toyokawa, Japan. So some things I've seen: successful greenways that allow for foot and bicycle paths, also urban plazas, especially if you think of La Ramblas in Barcelona, that are central pedestrianized areas. And I think on a much smaller scale, we can look at doing this at Valco with outdoor dining, foot traffic, vendors. Lastly, countries in Northwestern Europe are really leading the way in solar-powered bike paths that light up at night. So they're littered with these mosaic chips that absorb light during the day and transfer into blue and green mosaic chips at night. And some of these paths resemble artworks, and they're really quite beautiful. So maybe if we could do that one day in Cupertino, I think that would look amazing.
Great. Okay. Darcy?
I think we need to aim for iconic, inspirational, and functional. Looking back on the Valco space, given the fact that we now have probably the most iconic, inspirational, and functional corporate space in the world within our borders that's completely inaccessible to the public, I think we need to step it up and deliver something that is equivalent to that in a public space, something that the public can access. I've never been to Australia. I'd love to go there, but when I look at the Sydney Opera House, I think that's just something that really fits the bill. I think that's something that we can achieve. I found it unfortunate that I was the only person doing pro formas, and that we ended up granting the developer roughly $700 million in additional monetary benefit over our SB 35 project. And we are rounding up to the nearest 100 million, only extracting $100 million of benefits from that. So I would say, use that leverage, get something in there. I don't generally agree with putting a performing arts center in there, because I think that there are some issues with dumping a couple or a few $1 million into it every year going forward financially. I'd love to see, being from Kansas City, we turned Union Station, which is a train station, into Science City, which is a bit of a combination of our local San Francisco Exploratorium and the San Jose Children's Discovery Museum. If we can apply those principles to Cupertino and have a similar type of space in that area, I think that would be incredibly well received.
Perfect. Thank you. Orrin?
So most of my travels over the past few years have been with Rotary, and it's big cities and rural villages. So there's not any examples in either place that I would like to bring back. But you don't have to travel very far to have an example of an innovative urban design project. We had one 2 years ago. It was called the Hills at Valco. It clearly was innovative, met a lot of the criterion that we're talking about here. But unfortunately, unless you have a time machine to roll back the clock, that's gone, and we have some other choices that we'll probably talk about later.
Okay, good. Thank you. Tim?
That was quick. So one city...
Let that be an example.
I know, but I talk slow. So one city we had a residence in was Elk Grove, and I played a part in some of the configuring of the bike trails, which I'm huge in, and the hiking trails. I think it's humongous, and there was forethought ahead of time to go in and make plans for these programs for the people, and it's great, and the parks are wonderful. A couple of weeks ago, I had toured with city officials up in the city of East Palo Alto. Many of us remember way back what that city was like, and it's the most fascinating thing to see what has happened with that city. And it did take a lot of money and a lot of proper planning to put unbelievable parks, and everything was just well thought out. And I'm very impressed with those two cities, because they came from nowhere and now they are something, and they have something to be proud of and something that's usable for the people.
Thank you, Tim. Liang?
Hi. It's an interesting question. Cupertino is a suburban town. We are close to urban cities, but we are, in the next 20 or 30 years, we are never going to be the urban city. So there are urban designs we might use, but we need to be careful to not bring in things like hills at Valco, which would be great at San Jose downtown, but in Cupertino, that would bring in too much traffic, and we don't have that infrastructure to support. I have lived in Germany for 2 years, and I lived in Taipei, and I go back to Taiwan and the Shanghai area every year. So visiting a place is very different from living there. When I lived in Munich, we moved into the suburban area of Munich, but within 3 months, we sold our car. Why? It's because they have such good transit system. That was 20 years ago. Such a good transit system, it can get me to the hospitals, to everything that I need access to, so I didn't need the car. And also, the transit stops was full of shops, and then they have 20 years ago, they had clocks that can tell me that bus will be coming in 20 minutes. So I can go shop and then pick up all the groceries, get home. I have everything done. But that infrastructure is not here. We want shops at transit stops like Valco.
Okay, thank you, Liang. You know, I think it's interesting that we have Jim Jackson in the audience, and whoever wins will be following in his footsteps. But when Jim Jackson was mayor and on the city council, they were talking about developing the first Valco. And here, only in California, would we be talking about tearing it down in only 40 years. And so I think it helps all of us to pay attention to what's going on and being done outside of our own borders. So the next question, I'm going to mix this up again, so there'll be 2 separate questions for the group. And again, I'm going to ask Orrin, Darcy, and Savita to answer this question. Is there, given your knowledge of regional government, is there a particular role that you think you could lead on behalf of Cupertino? And Orrin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, clearly, of the regional agencies, and there are a lot of them that are important, but obviously VTA, given that traffic is probably the biggest issue in Cupertino, VTA would be the one. We're lucky to have an actual representative on there. I was on the advisory committee before. I'm really on traffic looking at some really future types of things that we'll have, you know, in the next 10 or 20 years. You know, it's not light rail, and it's not some of the other things that people have been talking about. So I would like to see how VTA, what they would do about really looking at some future types of things and not the same old stuff. So VTA would be the agency for me.
Okay, thank you. Darcy.
Yeah, I would say as mayor this year, my approach has been to try to give my fellow council members the assignments that they want. So, you know, from a collaborative perspective, what I try to do is, you know, really establish the functional groundwork for, you know, making people essentially happy. But for VTA, I agree that we need to step up our involvement on it. It's something that we really need to look at in terms of getting good transit. Dearden Station is our local connector. It would be wonderful if we could go under Stevens Creek in San Carlos. I think that there is buy-in on that, and it's going to take a lot of you know, very serious discussions and thinking and intelligent you know, connection making. The Joint Powers Authority, I was on that last year for our county library. We were able to get some expanded hours. That was great. We should stay involved with that, and we will because we have a seat. And it would be great to see the library expansion in terms of getting that additional programming space. One thing that we haven't really participated in of late is the local agency formation committee. I think Cupertino's presence on that would be good. It would show the region that we have a stake in what happens with regard to the changing of borders and whatnot when these types of discussions are arising.
Perfect. Thank you. Savita.
Thank you. So Cupertino is no longer suburbia. We have 280 and 85 running through us and Stevens Creek corridor. So it's really important to address traffic, and VTA is one of the answers. I was on VTA PAC for 2 years, and then I was elected by 4 other West Valley mayors to be on the board. That is an election done by other mayors. It's not assigned within our city. So we need to try and keep that seat going forward as much as possible. Being on the board, you're representing 5 cities, so you can tackle these issues regionally, come up with a solution that helps with regional traffic, because traffic doesn't respect boundaries. So I actually worked with the mayors of the cities neighboring us, Santa Clara, San Jose, and the county, to get them on board to agree to come for a solution on Stevens Creek corridor, which hasn't been done in forever. And because of that, because we got a letter from VTA saying that, I could work later with Apple to get them to join us in the same effort. Similarly, we need to work with the county, ABAG, MTC, Caltrain, everything to jointly have some say in the region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now a question for John, Hung, Tara, Tim, and Liang. Given all the dialogue back and forth over Valco and actually any other issue going on in the city, is Cupertino maximizing social media for outreach?
Good question. I've knocked on hundreds of doors over the last 3 years, hundreds. And I am amazed at how many people do not know what's been going on. I knock on doors a month ago and they say, didn't we vote down Valco Measure D? There is clearly not the outreach that should be done, that can be done with all the technology that we have. At any rate, knocking on doors, letting people know what's going on, then it's of no surprise when they say, my gosh, I don't want that. That is a huge indicator that we need to be reaching out to the community. If our local government is not representing the residents, that's a huge problem. Our elected officials are here for the residents, not another agenda. And so ask yourself, do you feel that you were well informed about Valco? Do you feel that you are well informed about the Oaks? Do you feel you understand what's going on with the SB 35? Ask yourself that and then say, what about my neighbors? Yes, Cupertino is far behind in getting resident engagement.
Okay, thank you, John. Hung?
Yes, as I said, for use technology, we can really formalize employing young people and getting to technology. You know, there are a lot of sayings on Nextdoor and WeChat. I think the city could get into there and then just get phone information out there. However, knocking doors, yes, I'm doing that every day and every weekend. Actually, the most response I heard from people is, it's about time to move Valco forward. And I understand a lot of people have their own jobs, their own family. Our residents want to enjoy their quality of life and just have their family life. So not many people, they want to be informed, but they also want to empower our city councils to make informed and good decisions. Yes, town hall meetings, that's well informed, get engaged people, that's very important, but it's also important for the council members to be well informed and then talk to residents and use that as a platform to make decisions, informed decisions. So there is a lot of misinformation. I think it is part of the city's obligation to clear those information, use technology, social media to get the correct information out.
Okay, thank you. Tara?
Thank you. Well, I think our city can be doing a better job of actively engaging residents before a decision's made, and then when a decision's made, transparently providing facts and reasoning behind it. It's okay to disagree, but decisions should be made transparently. As for social media, I don't think we're doing as much as we can. As someone who has hands-on community outreach experience, I know what works and doesn't work. I think we're doing a great job of utilizing Nextdoor and sending citywide blasts, but our social media posts can be more interactive. For instance, I appreciated the recent poll on the citywide shuttle, which allowed residents to weigh in on potential routes it could take. As a city council member, I'd want to supervise a city council internship program, which is something I have experience doing. And I think a lot of students would be able to think of even more creative ways to engage residents on social media.
Good, thank you. And Tim?
I like the idea of town hall meetings because I love to talk to people and I love to hear what they have to say. But I still believe that there's a lot of technology out there that we're not using. We're pestering people with vote for me text, but why can't we give people information the same way? So get out there with the information, but yet as a council member, you need to be available 24/7 when people call, or when they email you, or when they call your cell phone. Just as all of us that run businesses are available, you need to be available to talk to people and tell them what's going on. A lot of people don't understand today what's going on at Valco, so they have no clue. So in the end, you're never going to have everybody happy, but at least make sure they're informed. And there's a lot of technology that I would work to make sure that they receive things that go on 24/7. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Liang?
I see that council members tend to reach out during the election year, but then after they get elected, often it's very hard to get in touch with them unless you're in their club, in their parent group, in their neighborhood group. So we do need council members who listen to everyone from different regions in Cupertino. How do we facilitate that? Besides social media, I think we also need maybe neighborhood meetings regularly throughout the 4 year that the council member is in service. And in terms of social media, the city does use Nextdoor, but it's a one-way communication right now. The city posts something, but then there is no interaction. So since I get involved with the city, I've been on Nextdoor, and even though now I'm a candidate, I am still continuing to be on Nextdoor because that's actually the place where I learned a lot from a lot of residents who have various different viewpoints. I think we do need council members who use social media to gather information. Maybe the city staff can help summarize the information.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got a couple questions that's going to be for all of you. And I'm looking for a yes or no answer only. I'll warn you in advance. It's going to be frustrating for you because these are tough topics. And I'm going to start with Liang. But my question is, are you in favor of the referendum against the Valco specific plan? Yes or no?
Yes, it puts it on the public vote. Yes and no. Okay. Sorry.
Your answer was yes?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Orrin?
No.
Darcy?
Sorry, I'm staying out of it.
So Darcy passes. Tara?
No, because no alternative plan is given.
Savita?
No, because the alternative is SB 35.
Hung Wei?
No.
John?
Yes, the residents have a right to be in the decision process.
Okay, perfect. Very good.
There is an alternative to have a better Valco plan. I have a roadmap out there.
And you can talk to everybody about that after the forum. My next question, again, I'm looking for a yes or no, and perhaps maybe I'll study it, but primarily a yes or no. Should companies pay a tax for employees who work in the city? I'll start with you, John.
I would like, yes and no.
Yes or no?
Okay. I would say no.
Thank you. Hung Wei?
Upon collaboration, yes, to invest into the community, mutual agreement.
Savita?
If no private-public partnership possible, then yes, otherwise no.
Tara?
It completely depends on how it's structured, but I'm open to the possibility, yes.
So that's a maybe. Darcy?
No for now, but let's keep talking and keep an open mind.
Orrin?
No for now.
Tim?
Heavens no.
Well, I like that one. Good. Liang?
With buying from the companies so that the tax benefit the businesses.
Okay, well, good. You all got through that very well. Thank you. So now, personally, I think it's always interesting to know what it costs to run for office or to get elected in Cupertino. So my question for all of you is, and again, I'm just looking for an approximate number, at this point, how much of each of you raised in your campaign? And I'm going to start with you, John.
Approximately $10,000.
Okay.
Less than, but
Approximate is fine.
approaching.
Okay, thank you. Hung away?
About $35,000, grassroots, no developers' money.
Okay. Savita?
I signed the voluntary limit, so I'm well within that. I'm somewhere around 23,000, all grassroots, no
Okay.
developer money.
Tara?
About $31,000, no developer money directly on my campaign, and we've publicly renounced independent expenditures where most of the developer money comes from.
Good, okay. Darcy?
30,000 as of June 30th, and after that, another 20,000 came in without fundraising.
Okay. Orrin?
I think I'm around 15,000, including about 5 of my own.
Okay. Tim?
I'm under 7,500,
Okay.
so with no fundraising.
Okay, good, good. Liang?
I think it's about 20,000, but of course, there are Sand Hill is sending out a lot of flyers for me to
Okay. Good, good. Well, I appreciate your honesty and your answers. Next question. And to keep it interesting, I'm going to just ask 4 people this question and then move on to the next 4 with another question. And so I'll go alphabetically. And so Liang, Tim, Orrin, and Darcy, what would be your top capital expenditure priority? So that would be something like a city hall or library, parks, whatever. So again, what is your top capital priority? Liang, what would your answer be?
So, first will be the library expansion, and we also need to introduce traffic demand management for the city employees that will help with the traffic problem. And then I'm also hoping that we will have small library branches on different sites in Cupertino, possibly partner with schools to use some school classrooms. And I would like to have a network of safe bike paths and pedestrian walkways.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
And
Tim?
community rooms in parks.
So some of mine would be seeking funds from state and federal government, as I've done in the past, to upgrade the walkways for the handicapped and disabled people, which this city is in dire need of. It's a disaster. And there are a lot of funds that we could get outside of using internal funds. Internally, I would love to see upgraded schools and bringing our parks from the 1960s, bring them into the new realm if you knew what they are, because they're not what we have currently. I would love to see changes in those regions immediately, as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Tim. Orrin?
So obviously, the city hall needs to be redone, and the plan that was there a few years ago incorporated, some additional things for the library, parking, et cetera. That's all up in the air now with the Valco-specific plan, but those would still be on my radar, high radar. The second thing is the park master plan, especially Memorial Park, that could use some major capital improvements. But the third thing is something new, and if we're looking at short-term traffic types of things, I've been to some seminars and some things like that to look at intelligent traffic signals. So that's an infrastructure thing that would cause traffic lights to understand in real time how to best manage traffic, and I think that'd be a very interesting project.
Okay, thank you. Darcy?
Thanks. My top capital expenditure priority is the library expansion. It's very widely used, highest circulation in the country, and it's also the one that doesn't really have a lot of daylight in the immediate for getting the funding and building out.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And now for the 4 on the right-hand side of the podium, the question is, what should we be doing now to address long-term fiscal stability, given that it's only a matter of time before we have another downturn? So Tara?
Thanks. Well, Cupertino is financially stable, and we have been for the last several years because our city revenues have outpaced expenditures. We're not a full-service city, but we get a lot done. About half of our budget is reserves and surplus, and that's good. We need the rainy day funds because by 2025, our expenditures are projected to exceed revenues because our growth in sales tax and property tax is projected to go down. Lastly, it was recently revealed that a former city accountant was embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from the city. This is obviously unacceptable. It shouldn't happen again, so council members should work with the audit committee to ensure that account reconciliation is being done in a proper manner.
Perfect, thank you. Savita?
Thank you for the question. We actually have been a fiscally prudent city, and I'm proud of that. And our budgets indicate that we are a stable city. Our population and city staff have grown gradually over the last 10 years, but we still have only about 3 employees per 1,000 residents, which is a little higher than where it was, but we need to be there so that we serve all our residents. Our revenues are split about 25% each from sales tax, property tax, and cost of services, but the balance of 25 to about 28% is transit occupancy taxes and other taxes. We do have a disproportionate dependency on Apple. So one of the things we do need to encourage is have a diversity of employers, but since Apple is performing well, I don't think we need to expect any hiccups there. We should be also looking at property taxes that are linked to property values in terms of when the property changes hands, what do we get, both in terms of commercial, okay, I'm down to it, but we also have a Section 115 trust for our pension liabilities, so we have a good reserve, so we are financially sound.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hong-Wei?
So again, one of the major responsibilities for any elected official is to make sure the agency he or she serves is fiscally healthy. So a big reserve for rainy day is a must, and I think our city is doing very well in that part. And again, attract another major employer. Yes, like Savita says, we have Apple. That's great. But Health in Valco specific plan actually has a chance to attract another major employer into our region. That's going to, give us a little more stability, and also support our local businesses. We need to support our local businesses so that we make sure that our tax revenues are steady. And another thing I think we can really do is, make sure when our property tax value goes down, that's when our, our money is going down. We need to take care of our residents by really provide them with quality of life, but not spending a lot of money. We can do park and recreation activities like what the park and recreation right now, and really make our residents enjoy the neighborhood. It's not a lot of big expenditure. So fiscal health, reserve, and attract a new employer, and support our local businesses.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And wrapping up with you, John.
So, of course, fiscal responsibility is first and foremost. We have income, we must not spend what we don't have. But a little bit different there, and that is our city is changing. The developers are wanting to do lots of projects, and with the very minimal amount of money that they compensate the city for, we're left with the infrastructure changes that are needed and the impacts that we all feel. I think the big place we should be looking is that when developers are proposing projects, right up front, they have to expect that they have to compensate for all the impacts. They have to compensate for those road changes that have to be done. They have to compensate for the school classrooms that are needed. No more just building more, bringing in more residents, more students, and then we as a city wind up pulling more portable classrooms into the playground. It's wrong. We need to not be using our money to compensate for that. They should be putting those classrooms to accommodate the number of children that they're generating and the impacts to the roads that are being impacted by them. Make sure that it's truly a balanced community, stay fiscally in good shape, but then make sure that we're not left holding the bag for things that we shouldn't. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Next question. In fact, I'll announce the next 2 questions in advance. And again, it's going to be 4 and 4. And I'll start with Liang on the first one. But the first question for the first 4 people will be, if I were to say inclusive playground, an urban design phrase, If I were to say inclusive playground, what would that mean to you? And then the second question is going to be, our population is aging, and how would you recommend that we improve access to city services? So the first question, Leon?
So inclusive playground is we provide different facilities that accommodate people with disability, people with mobility issues, and to me that we should also include playground facilities for senior citizens. I've seen playground with spatial exercise things that especially designed for adults. So
Okay.
I'm hoping that's something we can consider.
Perfect, thank you. And Tim?
So I've had the opportunity to visit a lot of playgrounds and enjoyed looking at some of the new technology that they have out there. And again, when you go around, I could take you around to some of the areas here that are just unbelievable. They're not up to snuff. So we're not accommodating not only the young, but the elderly. So there's a lot of areas we could involve fixing and coming up with a master plan for the playgrounds that would involve inviting the seniors and make it more user-friendly so than what we're seeing today. And again, we're back to what I said earlier about the 60s. We need to come up to date on a lot of those programs.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Orrin?
So, yeah, basically an inclusive playground is dealing with people with different disabilities, whether it be physical or mental or emotional or whatever. With my time, especially last year as district governor for Rotary, I had a chance to see a couple of great examples of that. One is obviously the big one that San Jose Rotary did in downtown there. That's a landmark one where they spent like millions of dollars. But then there's one in Santa Cruz. It's I think they just did the groundbreaking a couple of weeks ago called Leo's Haven, and it's a similar type of thing. And the interesting thing there, they put it on Facebook, and they had somebody donate $10,000 from somebody up in Oregon that just was a friend of a friend, and because their kid needed that type of thing, they felt that pull so much that they actually donated to something down here. So it's well needed, and I think we can do it.
Okay, thank you. Darcy?
So an inclusive playground to me, because I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old with my wife Sharon, we have gone to these playgrounds, the one in Palo Alto, the Magical Bridge Foundation Playground, as well as the Rotary Park in San Jose. To me, it means a really nice playground. Just one that in all design aspects just caters to all these different parts of a child's imagination and how they can engage with the surroundings. So for me, it means upholding some of our societal values in the sense that when we really strive and we aspire to be able to include as many people as possible, we can come out with a better product. But of course, that's not inexpensive. It's something that takes resources and time to design out.
Okay, thank you. And then the question for the next 4 would be, with an aging population, what can we do to improve access? Tara?
Yeah. Well, my work and passion is constituent services and connecting folks to the different city services they may need. So as a councilwoman, I'll be personally handling my own constituent caseload, so anyone's free to reach out to me. I know we don't have a separate department for that. Staff usually incorporates it in their own work. I'd also want to review various city departments to see if there's service level difference by area, and I'd want to be attentive to any resident complaints and investigate any discrepancies there. I'd also want to make sure that public safety information is available and accessible in different languages for our diverse community, especially for our senior community.
Okay, thank you. Savita?
Thank you. It was my platform, the first time I ran was to help seniors. And one of the things I've been doing in the last 4 years is to try to get services to them, which they cannot otherwise access. And one of the programs was Ride Curb-to-Curb Transportation with the help of VTA County and the 4 other West Valley mayors. And that seniors truly appreciate that because they don't really they're not comfortable using the smartphones. Other services that we need to get to them is especially when it comes to medical food services, and that is again something I've been working with the senior community because they do not have other accesses that the rest of the population have. And if I could briefly talk about the inclusive playground, I'm really hoping that Rotary joins the city in doing the inclusive playground because we are moving it forward. We worked on a grant and hopefully we will get that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hong Wei.
So I'm going to tie, we love inclusive playgrounds. I'm going to tie that with housing for seniors. Inclusive playground is to design an environment for inclusive and interactive place for children of all abilities and ages. And I believe Cupertino needs to create an environment for inclusive, interactive for all people to live, and seniors especially. To be a senior-friendly city, it has 8 paddles. It's housing, built housing close to transportation, shopping, and it's transportation, social participation, and respect and social interaction with seniors. And also communication, information, community support, and health services, outdoor space, and really great places for them to interact with people. So what we need to do as a city is to create an environment that's inclusive and interactive with our seniors.
Perfect. Thank you. John.
Great. So for the aging population, having just kind of gone through that, going through that with my mom, as they age, as we all age, our worlds get smaller and smaller, and I feel the key to longevity is making sure they have exciting things to do. Finding those things is a challenge. Let's provide more of that information to them, because trying to find it on your own, it's a challenge. And having some assistance there, but then they're also going to need transportation options, and we need to provide that type of information to them. Overall, they will wind up with a much more exciting life, a longer life, a more enjoyable life. The inclusive playground, I would go on to say that it's beyond just your traditional thinking of a playground with some rides, but it should include a lot more of these experience type things. The kids love the library, so put a small area in the playground that does have access to social media, science type things, things that they can do inside, not just on sunny days. Make it a much more involved place.
Okay, thank you, John. That brings us to the final question today, and this question is for each one of you. And looking ahead, after completing your term or your time in office, what would you like your legacy to be? Leon? Leon, we'll start with you.
So I've heard some people talk about legacy. I think when legacy shouldn't be for a council member personally, I would like to see a legacy where Cupertino is much more engaged than ever before. And then all the residents know where to access the information. They know where the city is going with each project, and they feel they are involved. They are the driver in decision making in Cupertino. That's a legacy I want to leave in Cupertino. So it's a united, connected Cupertino.
Perfect, thank you. Tim?
What I would love to see is a more vibrant city financially, where it's stable for long term, where we have brand new business coming here that's going to bring a lot of money into the city and make the city survive through bad times much easier. And I'd love to say that I played a part in helping Cupertino have #1 schools and in the state. I think that would be huge. I would love to. And the last thing I'd love for people to say, my history has always been, is that I'm available 24 hours a day, and I do answer people, and I do care, and I wholeheartedly reach out and help people when they do have issues at all ages.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Orrin?
So I'd like my legacy to say he helped bring civil discourse back to the city council. and also left Cupertino in a better place to live, work, and play.
Thank you very much. Darcy?
Right. I'd like my legacy to be that I'm leaving Cupertino a better place for my daughters, who are, like I said, 6 and 4. I like them, when they're my age, in another 30 some odd years, to be able to live in a cleaner environment, to be able to enjoy our open spaces as well as our spaces that we put forward on a civic level. And I'd like them to be able to have honest conversations with people. And hopefully one of them will, have a platform to run for and become president of the United States one day.
Great. Tara?
Thanks. We obviously have a lot of political division in Cupertino, and in my honest opinion, I think it's destroying our community and negatively impacting our quality of life. I think the root cause, and I witnessed this before I decided to run, and especially now that I'm a candidate, I truly feel this is happening in Cupertino because people have lost faith in their government and their city council. So I think the only way to move forward constructively from now is to regain that trust, not making the same mistakes as our previous councils, proactively planning, preparing for SB 35 and laws like it, actively engaging the community even when we disagree, holding an administration accountable to the needs of the community, and reducing the influence of big money in our politics. So I'd want my legacy to be that I helped implement reforms that restored transparency and trust in our government. I helped secure approval and funding for 21st century transportation infrastructure. I approved housing and development that meets the needs of our community, not special interests, and I took serious action to address our climate emergency. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you. Savita?
And thank you, Phil. And just like Jim Jackson said, something that was started several years ago, I'm proud to say I voted on that. I voted to transform a dead mall into a vibrant, multi-generational, mixed-use destination. I voted so we can plan today for future mass transit and save our environment. I voted so we'll have a place for our teachers, our public service workers, our first responders, the disadvantaged disabled community, so we can live together in a multi-generational, cohesive community. I voted so we create value for the next generation. And leadership is not about the next election. It's about the next generation. This was said by an author in England named Simon Sinek. So that is what I would like to see my legacy as. And this is something from a musical that many of you have seen of Hamilton. I want to build something that's going to outlive me. What do you want?
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Hung Wei?
I want it to be our legacy. It's not just my legacy. I want us to, Cupertino residents, to build inclusive housing for young professionals to live among us, for teachers, nurses, working families to live among us. We have an opportunity at Valco, we have opportunity at Oaks, we have lots of opportunities. Let's build inclusive housing and be interactive with the people who already work here. And I also want to leave another legacy as a Cupertino is to really build transportation regionally, but that's not going to be happening in 4 years. So hopefully we can build it in the next 8 years. That would be our legacy, not just my legacy.
Okay, perfect, thank you. John, you get to have the last word.
Okay, so I would hope that in this day and age that we really start using the knowledge that we have. Being a California licensed engineer, I don't make decisions based on hunches. I make decisions based on data. I hope that the community looks back and says, during John's tenure, we made good decisions, we calculated the impacts, we made sure that was available for all the residents to understand, and the residents got to weigh in, and the right decisions for our community got made. And John did this not for himself, he did it because of the community. He rose up when he was raising his young family and volunteered so that the Cupertino community would then benefit. Thank you.
Perfect. Loved all the answers. Thank you very much. So this brings us to the end of today's forum, and I'd like to thank all of the candidates for running in this election. It takes a major time commitment to run, takes a major time commitment to to serve, and it takes a lot of courage to undertake such an endeavor. So many thanks to our candidates. I'd also want to thank Cupertino Rotary for hosting this event, and also to the League of California Voters for their support, and of course to the city staff for making this televised event possible. So thank you, everyone, and it's now okay to give your applause. Thank you.